Hello, it's been a while. So we're going to chat shit about factions. There's a first time for everything. We're talking about the Ember field, and glad to be joined by Callum and Jake, and of course the lovely Dan. How is everyone?
Yeah,
Good.
Good.
Missed this.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Is it the first time we've talked about factions?
it is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah,
It is definitely.
it is.
It feels familiar, but yeah, it's a long break.
Yeah,
And it helps that we've got two of the brains of the project involved on the call.
well, I was going to say we'll have to do it. Callum and I'll have to do our best to put any biases aside.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no bugs, Callum.
And so on that note, we'll avoid giving our thoughts on the matter because unless Dan or Jake, you want to jump in and say it's absolute garbage, feel free.
No, I think I may be in. I want to say the majority here, thinking that last cycle's field metas, the new ones, I wasn't a fan of. But anybody who didn't know or didn't see, I played in every single meta last cycle. So I got each badge and tried each of them out and all that. And I think Primeval was it was terrible, to put it bluntly. When it was so centralized around, I think I'd say three things would probably be giving it some leeway. I think Dragon, Feeny, and Quillfish. And it wasn't the most versatile of metas.
It wasn't. I played it a couple of times, and I found it quite fun, to be honest. I thought it was quite a fast-paced meta, and that's no bias. I wasn't involved in that,
But you're a Feeny user.
I only used it in one of the two.
Because there seemed to be a bias in it of those with Feeny and those without. And if you didn't have a Tapu Fini, then you were already on this uphill struggle. I'm not saying it's completely impossible, because I've seen what's the ice dragon thing? I can't remember its name. The blue thing.
Aurorus.
Yes, I've seen people do really good things with Aurorus.
Or if you're Yan and you're mental, just use Amora instead.
Yeah, but Jan's Jan, you know what I mean? And I think the word mental, I prefer savant. The metas, there's no bad metas. I think we've discussed this before, and time tells us this as we go on, and something else appears equally as bad, and then you think, oh well, actually Firefly wasn't that bad, really. As long as
True opinion.
As long as you didn't use Leo, actually it was quite fine.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think, and I'm not saying that, don't get me wrong, Jake, I'm not saying that it's only bad players, but you are right. Primeval was an uphill struggle, and it didn't. I only played it in practice against people because my faction very much nobody liked the ultra meta, so I lived there last cycle, which was a horrible place to be be honest. I don't think any of the metas really screamed out.
Go on.
Sorry, Matt.
I was going to say we really struggled with Ultra League last cycle as well. We had a few people try their hand at it, and nothing seemed to stick for us. So we
had people fighting over it. It was weird.
Yeah, surprisingly, it was our favourite meta, I think. Isn't
it? Yeah, it was the one we performed best in, I think.
One person wanted to play it in mine. Not one person. It was like, Dan, you're doing it. I'm like, okay.
I know we've moved on from this topic a little bit, but one thing I quickly wanted to mention was you mentioning Aurorus was really interesting, because what we found was that it had the highest surge in usage towards the end of the cycle across all of the metas. So I think it was a sort of a sleeper pick that people slowly caught more and more onto. And I think that's always something you find with metas. There's always something which surges late, and it typically tends to be similar Pokemon, I find.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say before we go back to Dan and his thoughts on Ember. I used Snorlax once in one of my 2 games because I fancied it over Munchlax because of the moveset, the viability, and that's something I'm sure we'll talk about a lot tonight. And I got to one point where there was the opponent, I think it was Tati I played, and he had the things that resisted Body Slam were on his team were Sudowoodo, were Frostlass, and were Cradily. So I ran Heavy Slam. I loved it. It was great. It was a lot of fun. I only used it in the 1 game, but yeah, it was.
It was enough to worry him about, though.
I think I remember somebody playing Earthquake Snorlax against one of us, and whoever was on the call at the time was just like, "Wait, what? What just happened?"
Yeah, moveset viability. I suppose that's something we'll discuss a bit more today than we have done in the past because we can change moves from factions. But go on,
Yes.
Dan. You were saying you had some thoughts on Ember.
On Ember, I think it's a nice traditional Silt meta, to be honest. I think it's actually quite well placed. I don't think it's overly complicated. I'm not bashing Vanguard by any means because I've only just started looking at it. But this seems, at first glance, something that actually has a lot of joy in it and a lot of, viability and a lot of play. I know it's going to be heavily dominated by a couple of Pokemon. One in particular that I think it's going to be really dominated by.
Being
Runagi.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes,
Oh,
that one.
Interesting. I kind of see that as a bit of a, like, it looks really good, but it's more of a sim hero, isn't it? Because if you go in Sand Tomb Shadow Ball, you've got to land the Sand Tomb to hit the Shadow Ball, and there's going to be things that can live the first Shadow Ball but only die because they've had the Sand Tomb bit. So I think it's going to be one of those ones that looks like it'll be better than it is.
Potentially. But I think that Gligar and Trev, are all going to be well used Pokemon, and you're going to see in most teams.
Yeah.
To be honest, if anyone's started building, I built a 6 for it last night. Just playing about with this, doing this in mind, I wanted to know what I felt worked with different things and stuff like that, and I can see them 3 featuring quite heavily, if not all 3 of them featuring on a lot of teams, which I think can be exploited.
Yeah.
Which possibly, yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned Trev. Like for me, I don't see Trev being good here, to be honest. I know it's
Just
always
because it's called Ember, don't let that.
No.
I think Ember's a poor choice of name for it.
I know what you mean,
Especially when K9's been banned.
Yeah,
Why
Well,
not run Ember Charizard?
There you go.
you
Spoilers.
see, I have 4 different Charizards.
You're right for this meta then, I'll tell you.
Not one of them has Ember.
I had a Ember Flamethrower double legacy Charizard years ago that I got in the trade, but for Great League, and I TM'd Ember off before. It was like ages ago. Like it's not one of those things I look back at and can regret, but I had the double legacy Charizard, which was a nice fun flex at the time.
I mean, I'm sure that now we've all got enough elite fast TMs to deal with just about anything. I think I've got 15 of them, and I think I've used maybe 2 ever.
I'm gonna see. How many elite fast TMs I've got.
What is your 4th Charizard?
18.
Dan?
18th. So, well, let's just
I think
start
what,
off.
let's hop into
Let's start off because we'll spoil everything that I'm going to talk about. So my pick is Pokédex number 6. And I feel it's a cheating pick in this meta because I'm not talking about 1 Pokemon. I'm potentially talking about 4. And beauty facts what Matt talked about was you can change moves. So my pick is Charizard because you don't know what's coming at you. I could be running Air Slash, I could be running Wing Attack, I could be running Dragon Breath, or I could be running Fire Spin. I'll tell you right now, I'm not running Ember. What even does that do? Really, what does it do?
It's better than Air Slash.
You say this, but I think you're wrong. Air Slash has its place in niche areas, not in many, but in niche areas. And yeah,
I think if you're going to be coming up against, so this meta has a lot of, so the allowed types we've got, and then there's a couple of additional picks that you're allowed to bring in, and the majority of those are fighters. And as you say, Air Slash is going to be the one that you want there instead of Fire Spin versus Blaziken or Poliwrath.
But it has wing attack access.
yes, but not everybody is me or Jake and has an abundance of elite fast TMs. Look at Matt. Matt's a total scrub. I bet Matt's not even got one. Matt's got like 400 bag space. You know what I mean? And this is why he only ever has five Pokeballs at any one time.
And 6 of those bag slots are taken up by elite fast TMs. I'll have you know.
Okay.
But I also have plenty of Great League Charizards, so that's no problem for me.
Yeah,
either.
I think I've got 7, including Shadows.
Yeah, you see, I didn't include Shadows.
Yeah,
actually.
well, they don't count
in
the
my
band
pick.
here. They're
Yeah.
banned here.
I didn't include Shadows, but I do have 4 regular. I had my original one, which really wasn't that great, and I've got 3 quite high PvP ranked ones because you pick them up and then you situate them where you want them to be. For this meta, I'm going to be honest. My initial thoughts, probably as always, I think I've spoken about this before, is Wing Attack. I think Wing Attack is a slick move. I think it's lovely. I still use my Wing Attack Pidgeot because I think it's great. I know Gust is busted, but I think Wing Attack has its very niche place. Here, it definitely does. And I know PvPoke hasn't got any sims or anything like that at the moment, but if you put together a custom sim together, you actually come out with some quite nice stats on Charizard. I mean, looking at the complete meta, you are beating in the one shield, I think it's 76% of the meta. And if you're willing to go to 2 shields, you're beating 79% of the meta, which in reality, you're losing against electrics. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, Charizard's always going to lose to a Mulga. It doesn't matter what you do. It's going down, you know.
Yeah. We should preface this by saying, like, what we were saying about Runarigas. There is a bit of Sim Hero pressure around Charizard because Dragon Claw baits and getting to Blast Burns. Those have got to be taken with a pinch of salt. But
I think you say that, but most of us now, and maybe I'm just only catering for people who have been playing for a long time and things like that, I mean, my thought process and stuff, but most of us now know how to handle the Charizard, you know, and know when to bait and when not to bait and know how to time our moves with it. Yeah, you could argue it's a little bit Sim Hero, but nothing. Water types don't even take a Blast Burn. No. You know, nothing.
That's true. Yeah, when Architects came out and I played Matt in some practice battles, I had Shadow Gyarados, and he one-shot it with a Blast Burn. I was like, oh, so that's how much that does.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really.
And you know, it's interesting. Like, people obviously chatting shit's been going for a while now. Like, and one of the things people say a lot is, "And with a shield advantage, you do this." And my response is, yeah, but you've got to have a shield advantage to do that. There's not much out there in Great League generally, yet alone in this cup, that is going to demand shields more than a blast burn from a Charizard, especially in a meta like this where there's not a huge load of bulk going around.
I would say one of the only things that is, you know, nonchalant about taking a blast burn is probably Evac. And even then.
Yeah, even then.
It's not an easy task to do.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to now look at AWAP taking a
By
blast burn.
the time you've done wing attacks, you know, you'd be probably in a Dragon Claw range at that point, and you'd probably want to shield the blast burn rather than the Dragon Claw still. So.
Yeah.
It beats AWAC in the one shield, you know.
Really? What? So what moves have you got on the AWAC there?
AWAC, Fire Spin, Shadow Bone, and Bone Club.
Shot a ball. Never throw the ball. Like, what's the point? Got the
I'm,
closing
I'm,
power.
I'm with you here, Jake. I'm with you here.
To be honest, I'm a baller as well. It's just what came up on. You see me balling. 2 shields you win though with
Okay.
ball.
fair.
2 shields you win. You win it comfortably as well, actually, if it's running ball. So this is the thing about Charizard. You have to know how to play it. It's frail. Do you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
don't like taking many things. Do you know what I mean? It gets hurt a lot, but the damage output is there. And with running something like Wing Attack, which is probably what I would go for, you've got the speed behind it. You know, Fire Spin isn't that fast. Dragon Breath. Do you know what I mean? It probably looks cooler than it actually is. Do you know what? So, and I don't think Fire Spin is doing enough to everything else. For all this is called the Ember Cup, I don't see fire as being the main type. You know what I mean? I think he's playing other things that have more versatility, which is why I chose Charizard to talk about over another fire. Because
But when you think about what embers are, they're tiny sparks of the fire dying off, giving way to something else. So in a way, it's quite poetic with what you believe about the cup.
you see, I think this isn't a dying fire, this cup. I think this is more like a sort of the beginning,
The
sort of like that.
ignition.
I was thinking the more the convection, the more the push behind everything else, to really kind of roar the fire. Sorry, people don't know I work in fire as my job. That's my professional job.
And this is exactly why I spoke, because I knew I'd get some fire talk. Actually.
I love a bit of fire, me. Do you know what I mean? Let's get the bell curve up and talk about it. It's great fun. But yeah, I see this as being quite fast paced. Do you know what? You could probably play this with no shields and have a great time. Do you know what I mean? Let's just ban shields and just go hell for leather at it. You know what I mean? Matches will last 30 seconds, but we'll all have a great time and leave it with a sweat. It'll be great.
Thing is, yeah, everything seems to have a massive attack. Like the top couple, you've got Quillfish, the Honchkrow, Trev, Charizard.
Dan, just going back to everything we've said here about Wing Attack being the primary fast move here. Now, we're acknowledging here, I suppose, the 4 of us as a group, that we think Charizard's better than Talonflame here. Would that be correct?
Yeah, 100%.
So why not take that one step further with the flying damage? And I'm gonna come to Cal as an initial response to this, because I've actually played Cal before using a Moltres with Wing Attack, Sky Attack.
Oh, it's a draft, wasn't it?
It was,
Yeah.
and it did bits. To be honest, it's a great one. Like when you think of, it's the same moveset Noctowl has, so it's got the counts. It's not particularly accessible, I'll admit as much, but it really hits hard, and it comes a bit faster than Blast Burn. And again, you're still losing to electrics. I wonder. I wonder.
So,
Oh, go on.
oh no, sorry, please go ahead.
No, because he was addressing you, and
I was going to say the problem is, although it gets there slightly faster than the Blast Burn, you've also got to remember that it doesn't have a bait option, which isn't always the end all be all, because you've got plenty of Pokemon with no baits. I mean, I know we've just said it's worse than Charizard, for example, but Talonflame is historically a very good Pokemon, and that's only really got the Flame Charge, which is still fairly expensive despite being a bait. You've got Pokemon like, for example, Victini, which now with the Quick Attack, it's not quite hard hitting anymore. But there's plenty of Pokemon which rely on nukes that still benefit. So I could see people with the access to Moltres picking it, but it's got a little less of a ceiling in that there's a slightly less you can do to force certain scenarios because it's taking slightly longer. But it hits just as hard. But one thing I would mention is that the bulk is generally lower in this cup than we see in typical Sylph metas. And so you might not be getting that return on investment when you're looking at Pokemon with even harder hitting moves, because at some point, the extra firepower doesn't do anything and you're only hampered by the lack in bulk. So I think you're right with the Moltres in that it has more situations where it could see play over the Charizard, but like you said, due to the lack of accessibility and the slightly lower performance ceiling, I think we will obviously see a lot less of it. But it's a good point to bring up because it went right to the back of my mind as you mentioned it.
I was going to say charge moves. That is your big difference. I think you can't overestimate that Dragon Claw bait. Underestimate that Dragon Claw bait, sorry. It does have its own little play, and we talk about shield advantage and how you get that one shield up, and that Dragon Claw bait, especially in factions where I suppose there's less mind games in factions than there is in normal Sylph, but you can, and I only mean that in the sense of you're not playing the same people over and over again as you get to tournament number 4. And I've played, say, for instance, Matt in the first round of 6, in all 4 tournaments, and I baited each time, and then in the 4th one I go, boom, no bait. And he remembers that, because you do remember that. You remember the people you play against, and there's that little bit of resentment, and a faction you play them once in a cycle. That's it. You don't play them again.
And I wonder as well, like particularly if you were using Charizard early game here and you're streaming and you've got 6 faction mates watching you play and you no shield a blast burn early on, you lose the game there and then. Like you then have to try and justify that to your team. So I think the pressure to shield Charizard in factions is even higher. Just for that reason.
Yeah.
I do also think there's one thing we need to point out here as well. That Dan, you just said that you're going to be playing people in factions that you've only played once, and so on and so forth. But this cycle is going to be a little bit different for us, isn't it, Dan?
It is. It is indeed. It is indeed. The Mortal Belters are on the rise, and the JD, as much predicted, are on their downfall.
One bad cycle.
Listen.
To be fair, I've made a promise to a member of the gym division already, and I very much intend to keep it. In the week that we do play each other, I will be playing Ultra, and so will Jan. We've already made.
Okay.
We've already made a blood promise to each other that we will play each other in Ultra, just for the hell of it, really, because we like it. And so, yeah, I'm off the table that week, Jake. Sorry, mate.
That's fair. Don't worry. I'll have to send some messages out and see who wants to have a go.
You see, I'm all up for the banter for it, me. I'm thinking I'll come out and say straight now, I'm going to play Jan. I'll even go as far as to say I'm going to pick certain Pokemon to him. And yeah, see how he takes it. See if he believes it.
Mind games.
Why not? Why not have some fun with it? We're all friends.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, on that note, I feel like we've exhausted the Charizard chat. So we'll move on to Callum next, I think.
Okay, so my pick is number 702, called the Antenna Pokemon, which I feel like is somewhat of a lackluster name for it, but that is Dedenne. And I don't have many fancy sims to share today, as I often don't, but I wanted to talk a bit more in a conceptual manner, which is that I believe Dedenne, sorry.
What's going on here?
Oh dear.
Things are getting
Basically,
philosophical.
I wanted to look at certain picks in the meta that I thought would become popular. And you have to look at the fact that we've got certain helicoptered in picks for a reason. So the main one that I think stands out are the fighters, many of which rely on their dark type coverage. And what's the type which will resist both the fighting and the dark? Well, that's the fairy. But when you look at the fairies that are legal, there's only Trinotic, which has Astonish, and Dedenne. And Dedenne is slightly problematic in that there's a fair number of grass poisons legal, But what I find is a lot of the top meta picks are really punishing towards grass and poisons and Pokemon with similar weaknesses to them, because you've got, say, the Charizard performing extremely well, very accessible, most likely on every team thanks to its moveset flexibility and its accessibility. You've got Hisuian Quillfish, which is looking to be an extremely strong safe swap and is, of course, very oppressive to the grass and poison coverage. And I quite like Dedenne for its ability to hit all the fighters, particularly I'm thinking Surfetched, Primeape, and Poliwrath, which I think are going to see a lot of play in this cup. I like its ability to still hit back certain grasses, for example, the Tropius and Jumpluff, which Tropius has slowly become more and more accessible, and more people are able to have access to that bulky beast. And Tropius has sort of seen its off days in GBL, but in Sylph, it's very much still a force to be reckoned with. And Jumpluff with the Fairy Wind boost has really boosted its viability and the amount of people wanting to run it. And although there are many ground types present within the meta, Play Rough hits almost all of them for a good chunk of damage. And the main ground type I see seeing play is Gligar. And the problem with Gligar is it relies on flying and dark type coverage for the most part, because return is a very expensive move to get to. So if you successfully shield that return and call that well, you can duke it out completely fine. And I think some people are going to be scared to stack more than up to 2 ground types on a given team, because you don't want to stack too many weaknesses. And I believe Poliwrath in particular is going to see a lot of play within this meta, so it can be quite hard to bring multiple grounds into them. Gligar has decently neutral play versus it, especially if it doesn't run as punch. But yeah, I just think, especially within testing, because I did a few scrims with Matt, as he mentioned earlier, I just found it to be so powerful and have such a high performance ceiling, because it's bulky enough to live what it needs to live, and it just hits back so hard despite having relatively cheap discharge. And yeah, I'm really excited to try it out within this meta.
And it's fast as well. And like in metas where there isn't much bulk, speed is super important.
Yeah.
One thing that you did note as well, while there may be a fair few ground types out there, the actual ground type damage is quite lacking. So I'm just going down I've just searched at ground on BBbug, and the best ones you've got Rune Regus for Santu, which is it's a nothing damage move, really, isn't it? Gligar with is it Earthquake or Dig?
Yeah, Dig and it's Dig on Gligar.
Yeah, it's Dig, Glide Score and stuff. Yeah. So you get Gligar with potentially Dig, but most people are going to go Return. Beerwhack with Bone Club, again, not too big of a damaging move. Glide Score with Earthquake, and then from there on, not really got.
I think Sand Slash is the one where you get consistent ground damage.
Even then, no, it's Earthquake, isn't it?
Yeah, there's nothing.
I mean with the mud
Bulldoze.
shots.
Yeah.
So it
but you're getting mud shots from Poliwrath, which obviously it's not going to win, but it can do some things. You're not going to want to take a Scold.
Poliwrath's going to be fairly
I think it's going to be
commonplace.
It's going to be everywhere. Yeah,
It's going to be good.
Do you know what I mean? I think it's going to have its place.
Go lurk with Mudslap for all the people out there who want to run Go lurk.
What about Fury Cutter Nidoking? Do you know what I mean? Getting in an Earth Power or something like that.
Well, at that point, why not Poison Jab Nidoking? Because I think we're at the point with Dedenne where the Poison Jabbers are the particularly looking at Quillfish and Nidoking, which, by the way, again, another mon with great moveset versatility. Fury Cutter, Poison Jab, Double Kick, Santoon, Earth Power, Mega Horn, Sludge. Like, what an arsenal that is.
But you could also have Amok with Poison Jab.
Yeah.
Which would be a big one.
Yeah.
You know, when you said about fairies, though, do you think? I love Dedenne and stuff like that, but do you not think people are going to look for that sort of fairy damage in other areas, and maybe run like a Charmed Donphan or something like that? which is going to hit all them fighters. That
I
you're talking
mean,
about.
I
You
would
know,
love-
people love just to tap. It's like we were talking about Talonflame earlier. It's just tap, tap, tap.
Looking at
tap.
you here, Drew.
Do you know?
personally,
Do you not see somebody just going? Do you know what? Sod it. I'm gonna have Donphan because I've got counter for the teams that don't have a dark fighter on there, but I've got charm on there because
personally for me, I think I would actually be happy to see Charm on Donphan specifically. It's usually usually a move I detest. Sorry, no, I love Donphan. If it's on Donphan, I can forgive it. It's something that I'm willing to look over.
it's
But
all about the animation.
yeah, exactly. Same with Pelipper. Ugly looking one, but the attack animation is fantastic. The main reason I specifically like the Dene over stuff like Jump Fluff with the Fairy Wind access, or say Blossom and Cherim with the Dazzling Gleam, it's because I think Malamar, you know how I mentioned earlier, there are some Pokemon which typically see upticks in usage later within metas. I think Malamar, spotting that there's only 2 viable or 2 legal fairy types in the meta, is something which can really capitalize on that. And it's typically something you see, especially in higher tiers, people who are really good with their energy management, people who are really knowledgeable about all their matchups. You tend to see Malamar become more and more prevalent within metas when it's legal because a hole opens up and people quickly capitalize on it. And I think Dedenne is a surefire, just hard blanket check to make them slightly scared to bring that.
You just wait till I run Hyper Beam Malamar. Got 2 superpowers, have I? Go fuck yourself.
You're right though. Malamar will come into play
Yeah.
here. Just because, again, I think once people get to grips with it, they'll realize actually this is a cup for speed. This is,
Yeah, definitely.
you know, on the seat of your chair, going for it, and quick thinking will be the quicker thinking players will do better at this rather than the more slower methodical players. Saying that, I still think we'll see loads of charmed on fan because people are sadists. So.
True.
Well, see, this is what I like about this cup. Like, there are, particularly within the electric and the ground types, there are a lot of things with niche coverage that in the counter team format might pick up viability that you wouldn't have in a regular Sylph tournament. I'm thinking kind of Electivire, Sandslash, as we've mentioned.
Charm Raichu.
Yeah, I mean, why not? You know, there's kind of
Frick Break Thunder Punch. You want some low energy charge moves, don't you?
yeah.
Yeah, but you're never reaching them, are you? You know?
Gosh, don't you know? But you know, it's there.
It's one of those. It feels like it's one of those methods where anything can work on a given week, which is kind of what Factions is, right? Yeah, to Dene, it's one of them ones where, like, I've been for a long time. I was sort of hoping for the fairy buff that we had recently because for a long time we were stuck with just charm as fairy damage, and sort of things like Galarian Rapidash were very few and far between in terms of viable fairy types that weren't charmers. And so the Dene is a mod that I'm always keen to use when I can. Yeah, I think it looks really good here for sure. I think.
Do you not think there's the ghost problem? I mean, I touched on it earlier that I think 2 of the main Pokemon in this cup will be ghosts. Dedenne traditionally doesn't do well in that scenario, whether it's against Runagrigus or Trevenant. It won't do well. I think Jake talked about Golurk earlier, which, you know, because of the Mud Slap, it might have play. I think it might be too slow for this cup, to be honest. But again, these are things that Dedenne's not gonna really do anything against. It's not really gonna, you know, it's not gonna hurt them that hard. And that's the one thing problem with Dedenne over the likes of Raichu, maybe. For all I like Dedenne and stuff like that, because it's fast and it's, as you said, it's surprisingly bulky. It doesn't have versatility. It does what it says in the tin. It kind of, you know, fast hitting, electric damage, and a big fairy move. But
I don't know.
is there anything it's got that's going to surprise you?
I don't know that I agree. I don't necessarily think it needs to surprise you. I think like for all play rough isn't last burn, it's still often enough to 2-hit KO something. Like I used it in the again, I used it in one of my Primeval games, and like with like is it a 2 Thundershock lead or something and good move timing, you beat a Cradily in the zeros because
that's quite cool.
because play rough hits hard, and
Mm.
it's kind of in a like it strikes me as there's 2 sort of distinct types of mons here. You've got mons like Hisuian Quillfish and Surf Etched, for example, where they're doing good fast move damage and consistent chipping away with charge moves. Admittedly, that chipping away is more damage than it might otherwise normally be because it's a fairly low bulk meta. But then you've got that, and then you've got things like Charizard and Dedenne, where you're not doing much fast move damage at all, but the shield pressure is stronger. And I think it's the kind of mon where, and the same goes for Charizard, where it's never going to win you a game on its own. Like nothing here is like it's just not going to happen unless perhaps you get a Night Slash boost with a Surf Etched or a Primate against a particularly poorly prepared team. Or,
Triple Ghost.
Yeah, like it's just it's not. I don't think it's realistic to expect any one mon here to be excellent. I think having just being able to like players can hit everything hard apart from like the Venusaurs of this world. Like it's going to do. I would guess like, Runerigus is about the bulkiest thing in the cup. I would have thought, and Gligar. I would suspect. Yeah, AWAC's a fair pain in the backside for it. But I would suspect that play rough would do about 40% of Runerigus. And that might be all you need to do at the end of a game where it's had chip damage from something else, if it's taken an Aquatail from a Quillfish or something. Like it's electric types typically are easily walled because of the ground type problem, because grasses are pretty good, dragons as well are pretty strong. And with Steel's band here, play rough is a really good coverage move. Powerful and stab. Like it's kind of it's going to hurt pretty much anything, and sometimes that's the best you can hope for, really.
What is it you were saying? What is it you were wanting to check about? Play rough against what? AWAC.
Runerigus.
Yeah,
Runerigus. Hang on, let's.
Then it was 30%, 40%.
The only things that can outbulk Runerigus I see are the 2
Jesus
glass
Christ.
flyers of Tropius and Jumpluff, which limit
The
play.
risky- The risky picks, but the flying grasses. I mean, if you're going to look at a grass in this cup, but let's not talk about that.
Yes.
So play rough does 49% to a Runerigus.
See,
Wow.
there you go. Right, it's kind of it's strong.
And you're only getting hit with a Sand Tomb back.
Yeah, but each of
With
them
Shadow
Sand
Claws. With Shadow Claws.
each of them Sand Tunes is going to take that 49% down and down and down and down and down.
Yeah, like
All the way around.
it's
Sand Tomb's the defense drop.
it's not a it's still not a nice matchup by any means, but it's kind of it's one of those where if you're stuck with, if you lead the Dene into Runerigus and can't ever get out of that matchup throughout the game, but if every time you're in that matchup you pinch 2 Thunder Shocks and then switch or what have you, or if you manage to catch a charge move from the Runerigus and something else, if you come out of that with a bit of energy, like that's the sort of situation that it's feasible at the end game to finish off, to have slowly chipped down the Runerigus throughout the game and then finish it off in the zeros. Well, it's not
in one of those instances where like you're a madman who's thought that Honchkrow is a good idea, and you catch a Sand Tomb or a Shadow Ball on that, and you've got a bit of energy advantage on the Dene, then you get a couple of steps forward, and then in the end of it, you're just like, well, energy management.
Joe, we know my feelings towards GPL. I really don't like GPL, but there was it last season, I think, I was doing well and I was making a run towards Legend. So I started tryharding it to try and get over the line. And the set that got me over the line, I switched a Frostlass into a Sableye to catch a return. And went that way. It was so like
somebody hurt their phone after that.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. So and for what it's worth, I don't think Honchkrow is a terrible shot either. But that's kind of
When we say Charizard's made of paper, Honchkrow is made of air.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? It's like literally a cough in the room, not next to it, just in the room over the other side of the room, near by the door as the Honchkrow's right near the corner, and you cough and the Honchkrow dies.
Yeah,
you say that, but there could very easily be an ABB Ghost lineup here of Trevor Rodriguez, and you've got a very powerful breaker in the back.
Yeah.
If you are concerned about that, Dan, then that's you can't ask for much more than that.
If you want a hard answer to Rodriguez and Trev.
Yeah, no, you can say that. You could
No,
say that.
no, you can't say it because it's not a hard answer. Have you seen how much a Shadow Ball does?
Go on.
Again, we're talking coughs. Have you looked at the Dene compared to against, again, as I said earlier, PV Poke hasn't released anything on this meta, so like everything's done a homebrewed. But it's less than 40% in every shield scenario. There's a lot of stuff out there that beats the Dene. So, okay, for the rest of us scrubs who are not playing up in whatever stupid league you're playing in, Matt, your average player, are they going to be good enough with this energy management and the style of play to use the Dene correctly? Or are you going to get a lot of people struggling with it because it has so many losses?
I see that. It depends which way the meta goes. Like if we've talked about Poliwrath a bit, we've talked about Charizard a lot. It might be that some of the and Gligar as well. Like it might be that there's a fair few mons here that are really, really safe, and there's kind of if you're at a team disadvantage or in a bad spot, like you could run a line of Charizard, Poliwrath, Gligar in whatever order and stand a chance regardless of what your opponent runs. You could tell your opponent you were going to run that line and still have a reasonable chance at winning. And
I feel like Quillfish would be a big.
Yeah, Quillfish
is also. Yeah, I think Quillfish is going to be another one of those ones where you can kind of just shove it into a team and you'll be right.
Yeah,
I think
not
Quillfish
quite as safe as the others, but those safe ones that I mentioned, the Dene has a lot of play against them all.
Yeah.
So
I think Quillfish is going to be the Frostlass. You know what Frostlass was to the Sorcerer's Cup in last field. In that it was just seemingly on every team because it was so safe and had such flexibility with, admittedly, it's only 2 to 3 moves of you sometimes go crunch to get them off guard. You throw at 6 and they're like, this is just an avalanche for the mirror and then they no shield it. But Quillfish potentially even more so because of that flexibility. So I think any opportunity where you can run it, or at least you have it, I think everyone who has a Quillfish suited will at least run it for about half of their faction sets because it's just so flexible here and so reliable, as you said, safe.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's factions, we can change the move sets of them, and you can just completely take somebody by surprise. Like, what if you want to run Shadow Ball, Ice Beam, just out of nowhere, double nuke with, the possibilities are ridiculous. It's going to be so versatile that you kind of going to have to plan for every given opportunity. I feel like it's kind of in a similar vein to like a Great League Zation or something, where you've got all these different charge moves and you don't know which one's going to come, and you've got to prepare for everything in how you build your team.
Yeah, I think going back to what Dan said about if you're not so confident about the game and that sort of thing, like, would you be able to use the Dene successfully? I think it's one of those where don't use it the first 3 weeks. See how the meta goes, see what's there. Then by the time the later weeks come, see what your opponent's been running consistently. And I'm not one for advocating for strong counter teaming in factions, because strong counter teaming can be a recipe for disaster. But if you yeah. But if if it gets to week 4 and your opponents run Charizard, Poliwrath, Gligar, Zapdos, or I don't know, I'm describing myself here at this point. Right, or Surfetched. If they've
Eggy the
run
Destroyer comes out.
if they've
Or
run
Eggy the Punisher, whatever it's called.
Eggy the Punisher,
The Punisher.
Eggy the Punisher. If your opponent's been winning that every week, then give it a go. Like, it's not going to let you down.
And even if it doesn't look good on, if it doesn't look good on paper or in your particular matchup, it's still there, and it still gives your opponent something else to think about, and something to worry about, and having to plan themselves around.
Yeah.
I know there's some people out there who look at teams and they're just like, oh, there's no way they're bringing that. And then when they do, they're just like, oh, what do I do now? I brought 3 things that lose to it.
I just think electric mons in general are the risky to use. As I suppose, as Matt said at the beginning, there's so many things that hardwall them, and I don't think. I think less experienced players struggle more with them. I mean, I've watched certain streamers trying to use an A2 and gone, "What are you doing? You're not experienced enough to use that mon," because it's a finesse that has. I mean, I like an electric mon. I do. Do you know what I mean? I'm a big Pachirisu believer. I love an Emolga. I love an A2 and stuff like that. But I've learned to use them, and I use them sparingly as well. Do you know what I mean? I suppose it's a bit like what Matt's saying, have it on your bench and use it as and when, but I don't use them lightly. I wouldn't just go haphazard into it and go, right, I'm just going to use this. There is a definite strategy to how I am going to use this and how I am choosing to play it. So.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. So unless anyone's got any further thoughts on Tedene, we'll move on.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a good job. So it's one of those ones that's going to be interesting, isn't it? It's kind of what we're here for.
So I'm up next, and I want to talk about ground types. Specifically, there was a toss of a coin about which ones I wanted to talk about, but I've stuck with my guns, and I'm sticking with Pokedex number 450, which is Hippowdon. This is the very definition of moveset versatility. First of all, it's a bulky mon. Stat product of around mid 1900s. Even in Open Great League, that's usable. That's sort of similar to Obstagoon, I think. So in this meta in particular, it's definitely very much on the higher side. You don't have a stab fast move, but what you do have is you have Bite and Fire Fang, which I wouldn't recommend. But what you do have are Ice Fang and Thunder Fang. There are a lot of good flying types in this meta. And having ice coverage on a bulky mon with Weather Ball Rock in particular, or Body Slam to get to those charge moves fairly quick, it's a really good general all-round flyer. It resists the poison jabs from Hisui and Quillfish, and is bulky enough to shrug off the Aqua Tails a little bit. There was a time during development where water types were banned, and at that point, Ice Fang Hippowdon was an absolute menace. It was unbelievably good. Now, water types obviously are allowed, and we've got things like Leaf Blade and Ice Punch on Surfetched and Primeape as well. We've got what water types are here? Ludicolo's here, Poliwrath's here.
Chinchou.
big chin chow.
You just
yeah.
wanted to say Tim Chow, didn't you? You just wanted to get that in there. So,
Rotom
so-
wash.
Rotom wash. Yeah, we would. Callum and I were
Let's-
talking about this last night.
let's not sleep on
Let's-
Rotom
let's
Wash.
not sleep on
Honestly,
Rotom Wash.
you know, if you've got one and your
So-
name's Penshu, you're gonna run it.
I actually looked into this last night, and Rotom only learns 2 water type moves in the main series games: Rain Dance and Hydro Pump.
Yeah.
So unless we get Rain Dance as some kind of low energy charge move in a similar vein to how Lantern got Surf, I don't see Rotom Wash as being all that for the future.
No,
Just
definitely.
But in this meta in particular, though, it's got the moves to be a fantastic one as a closer as Zero Shields. But yeah,
I think if you've got a bit of an energy lead, then you'll be fine. But this is another one of those things where you were saying earlier about if I get an energy lead, if I get a shield advantage, that's all well and good. But what if somebody?
What if you don't?
What if you don't? What if somebody takes down your second to last mon with their last one, and then
I mean, you're underestimating surprise factor there, Jake. You know what I mean? If Rotom Wash comes out in front of you, you're like, what the?
But I think if for example someone takes out your second to last mon, you then bring in a Rotom Wash one turn, like one fast move behind. I think there's a lot of things that are gonna steamroll you a little.
Oh yeah. I don't think anyone's seriously advocating for it, but it's kind of, I wouldn't, it's something you should be mildly prepared for. And you kind
Yes,
of not
I think
rule
with
out.
one person, you'll play one person in 10 tournaments who's got one.
It's
So
before
Dan will
playing.
play. So Dan will play 5 with his 50
Yeah.
tournaments.
Yeah. Go on, Cal. What were you going to say?
Just before we move on, we've covered all of the water types except one, and I just wanted to say it because I can hear Jamie Gunn screaming at me in the back of his mind. There is also Lombre. So all of you out there with the XLs ready and the dust. I just wanted to get that out. And speaking of XLs, before we go back to the beautiful Hippowdon, there's something slightly bulkier. Hippopotas
the
is
baby
illegal.
hippo.
in
No.
this-
Looked at this because when Matt first mentioned to me that he was going to run this, I was looking at it thinking, have I misread it? Is he going to run this one instead? Because this one looks actually really tasty.
Go on.
And I think it looks better.
What moves?
Tackle, bite, body slam, rock tomb, dig, and potentially return.
No
Yeah.
chance. Absolutely no chance.
So this is a Yan pick. This is something that we're gonna now we're trademarking this. This is a Yan pick.
Rune Regus eats this thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's funny. And
I
it
know,
gets bite.
no.
And it gets bite, so you
Yeah.
can surprise them. So
What you have just described with that mon is another mon that I was contemplating picking. What you've just described with that mon is an Ursaluna that doesn't have Thunder Punch, which I think is a
Yes.
legitimate pick here. Well, that's with tackle, Thunder Punch, high horsepower. It's one of those. It's going to be very good at losing the zeros narrowly, setting up a farm down for a Charizard or a Quillfish. and that's
Did he
game.
just say Charm down? Is he revealing that he's planning on running Donphan with Charm in every cup, and he's just
I'm
gonna?
exposed.
I mean, Matt's got to
Mono-
Matt's picked
monogram.
ground types, hasn't he? Yeah.
you forgot Lilligant. There's Lilligant too, which has the worst win rate I've ever seen. But
Yeah.
Just while we're on the topic of ground types, I said this when the meta got revealed that I absolutely love the little image that they've done. Whoever made the image for the Mud Boys, perfect, absolutely, really good and instantly accessible. It's something that just it made me laugh, and I was just like, yeah, that's absolutely perfect.
That's what Mud Boy is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
right, we'll let you get back to your topic now. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So, but on Ursaluna, legit mon here, I think. Hippopotas, not. But yeah, Hippowdon. Like, it could be. It's one of those mons where, Right, let's say you have a really, really bad matchup, and we've all been there. You know that your only way of winning is RPS, and you've got to hope to win the lead. You know, like even if your opponent's got 2 water types on their team, if you're playing Jamie Gunn and he's got 3, he's got Ludicolo, Lombre, and Poliwrath. Like you can
And Chin Chow.
and oh shit, well maybe it doesn't work anymore. But let's say they've got 2. Like you can play the numbers, run Ice Fang Hippowdon in the lead, and you at least if you've got a good shot.
You take that soft loss, knowing that you've got a bit of farm down on whatever you bring in the next thing.
Yeah.
And you're getting yourself in a position that you've got a charge move ready.
Yeah, and you've also got the possibility of, well, what if they lead Charizard or whatever, because we've rocked to them, or what if they lead Quillfish? Like those poison Quillfish isn't going to be Hippowdon, even with Aqua to it. And you've got the easiest switch advantage of your life, as long as you've got something to hard counter their switching, of course. Which if you're resulting to play an RPS because you've got a bad matchup, you do. So I think it has that, which is potentially useful in factions, especially because there's situations where just often getting 1 point, like losing 1-2, might often be the difference between winning and losing as a team. So there's that. But then,
just out of interest, what's your preference for fast move sets kind of thing?
I don't.
So
You have
obviously
to see the
it's got-
team. You have to see the team.
You have to see the team.
Okay, yeah, fair. Yeah.
Because
it's got those coverage charge moves as well. Like you've got Body Slam, you've got Weather Ball, Rock, Earth Power.
Mm.
I think it's got. What else?
Well, building back on
Body
that,
Slam, yeah.
you can sometimes force switch without even meaning to. Let's say you ran Thunderfang this week because you kind of like the look of it. You lead Hippowdon into a Gligar. Your opponent immediately goes, "Oh no, that's an Ice Fan one." Swaps out. You tap once by accident. They swap something in on you, like a Poliwrath, for example. Do a bit of chip damage, catch a move on something else. You've got switch by accident. You win that game easy.
Yeah.
And just on that point, if you go Thunderfang versus Poliwrath, and you go straight Thunderfang, forget Body Slams, forget Weather Ball Rocks, forget Earth Powers. If you go straight Thunderfang, you can 2-shield farm it before the Poliwrath gets the 3rd Ice Punch. So you come out with
ridiculous.
You come out with 80.
That seems awfully wrong.
No.
Are you actually sure on that?
Yep. You come out with 80 energy and over 80% health.
A non-stab, paper thin fast move. It's not paper thin.
No, Thunderfang's.
Thunderfang does, yeah.
It's a damage output
Right.
one. Its energy is poor. Like the fangs are poor moves.
He's right, yeah. You come out with 80 energy and 111 health. But even if you don't, the Ice Punch only does 40%.
There you
So
go.
if say they've got what is it, one fast move advantage off you, then you'll come out with 80 energy and roughly a third of your health.
But and the beauty of that is, like, realistically, Poliwrath isn't ever going to have a fast move advantage on you because you're not switching your Hippowdon into a Poliwrath. I mean,
No.
you might, but you
No,
probably
I don't
should.
see why. I don't see why you wouldn't. Again, if you've got only if you've got Thunderfang. I think if you've got Firefang or Ice or Bite,
Yeah,
then you
it could be an interesting AVA line where if you lead Hisui and Quillfish and they lead Poliwrath, like it could be you could switch at that point. You could switch Thunderfang Hippowdon into the Poliwrath, and then what does your opponent do? Does your opponent stay in to try and deal with your Poliwrath, to try and deal with Hippowdon at the expense of leaving your Quillfish in the back unanswered? Because Poliwrath's arguably the best answer to Quillfish here. Or do they switch out to save the Quillfish for the Poliwrath, the Polarific Quillfish, but the risk losing switch to compensate to and not ending up with that matchup in the back. So there's play there. Yeah, but I think the problem with Thunderfang is Gligar and is Runerigus.
Yeah.
How I see Hippowdon playing, I see it almost as like some sort of nuclear deterrent, where if your opponent tries getting fancy on you and picks a strange team that doesn't have a water type or doesn't have a ground type, and all of a sudden you've got Poliwrath sitting there on your bench, as let's say you're really happy with your other 5, you don't know what you want as your 6, stick your Hippowdon on there, because there's not much in this cup that can punish poor team building as much as Hippowdon can.
It's like Skuntank in, I want to say Sorceress, I could be very wrong, where I think there was a technical video about it where he ran Bite against Nesta and just demolished him because the team wasn't prepared for that different moveset. And if in this kind of environment, you really do have to be aware of every possible move that can come against you, because otherwise you're just going to get taken by surprise and just get absolutely demolished.
Like we got relegated from Emerald because I didn't shield a Fire Blast from Garchomp against my Tapu Bulu.
I remember seeing that.
Like,
sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
No, I mean, it's like looking back now, it's quite funny. But
Jan and I were stood at a bus stop in Berlin, watching that video, like crying with laughter, and the amount of people that just turned and looked at us, and we were just like, nothing at all.
Yeah. So you have to be aware of movesets, and the beauty of Hippowdon is, well, one of the things is, it's like we talked about with the Dene. Even in a losing matchup, it's got a charge move in Earth Power that's going to do enough damage to cripple something. And yes, it's much slower getting to its Earth Power than the Dene is to getting into its Play Rough, but it's also got the extra bulk to compensate for that as well. So,
and the fact that you're going to be taking no damage from those fast attacks.
Yeah,
like the Thundershock's not a damaging move to begin with, but you're still going to be like, it's double resisted on top of no damage. So yes,
yeah. Oh, but I'm talking about in a situation where Hippowdon's up, if you've got Thunderfang Hippowdon up against Runerigus, for example.
Yeah,
and it doesn't really matter that the Thunderfang is doing nothing, because ultimately it's the Earth Power that's going to be the damage regardless. But it's going to do a chunk enough to the point where it's going to make it easier for the next mon. Particularly if that's, I don't know. To be fair, there's not a great deal here that does have a lot of fast move pressure versus Runerigus, so maybe not a great example. There's not much that's going to farm down a Runerigus. Perhaps a Snarl Amok or a Snarl Honchkrow. Just throwing it out there. But yeah, Hippowdon. If you've got a nice safe 5 mons that you like, and you think, well, there's no reason for me to use anything else, because there's a lot of options in this cup. But as we said, there are safe mons here, and you could pick 5 of them as a set and forget thing, and not really be counter teamed because of the safety. But yeah, if you wanted to stick something on as a wild card, perhaps.
I think it would be a good one to pair with Charizard, because you again, moveset versatility. The amount of different things you could run on Hippowdon, the amount of different fast moves you could run with Charizard. They're different. I think they'd go well together. I think one thing that you do have to bear in mind, though, is if you get a Charizard up against the Hippowdon, odds are they're going to outrun Weather Ball. So, just telling you out there now, if you get a Charizard against Hippowdon, probably shield. It's probably a good idea.
I think amongst all this discussion that we've had about moveset versatility, before we move on to the next model, One that we've not discussed moveset versatility on is Poliwrath, because I think we've been working on the premise that Scald Ice Punch is kind of the way, because you kind of need Scald for Charizard.
Yeah.
You probably want Ice Punch because of Tropiuses and Jumpluffs and that sort of thing. So then where does that leave you in the mirror versus other Poliwrath? So I think team building, I think there's got to be like good team building here is going to require, like part of that is going to require forcing your opposing Poliwrath, and similar with things like Primeape and Surfetch as well, particularly Primeape. You've got to force them to be able to not automatically choose their charge moves. They've got to choose what they're missing out on.
If you're
I
fine
mean,
with me
if you're using a Mon as your only defense, you're using the mirror as your only counter, then sorry, you deserve to lose. You know, like that. Sorry.
Well, fair enough. Yeah. Go on, Cal.
That's yeah.
I was going to say, for example, if you don't mind me mentioning the scrims that we did when we were first
Of course.
getting the meta out. So, for example, I went off the assumption that that's how you would think when looking at the team that I built, that the Ice Punch and the Scald coverage would be what would save you on the safe swap, which is exactly why I went Dynamic Punch.
There you go. Yeah.
So you can use your own opponent's knowledge to your advantage sometimes, which is the great thing about factions, where you can change your moveset each round. And like you said, that's the whole point of that, the moveset flexibility. And I think you sometimes have to look at when you don't necessarily need the Ice Punch, which is, yes, you will probably have a much harder time in the Gligar matchup. But what if you get a Scald debuff? 30% chance, that's not zero. If it's not 100%, it's 50%. That's all I'm saying.
Callum's been watching Anchorman recently, and he's just found out about 60% of the time it works every time.
Yeah.
No, but on a serious note, it's Poliwrath does gain a lot from the Dynamic Punch, which you can sometimes miss with all the ghost types present, but you can sometimes think, oh, this is a bit of a liability. But I think Scald is the number one move I think I'll probably always run unless I'm up against a really janky team. But no, there is a place for the Dynamic Punch here, which I think explicitly comes from you get a harder hitting stab move on stuff like Malamar and Quillfish on just the neutral matchups. And it's better versus the opposing fighters, where you could fish for the Scald chance, but you just want that early damage, because something like a Surfetched isn't tanking that. Something like a Machamp isn't tanking that. A lot of the other fighters don't have much stat product to them, which is where Poliwrath differs, because it's a slightly bulkier, more charge move, excuse me, oriented Pokemon. So that's a good point to mention, and I think it's really important to mention for this episode.
When you come up against that inevitable Rotom wash, you're going to want Dynamic Punch.
So I fully agree with Callum here. Is that I when I looked at it, and I was thinking Poliwrath, I never intended to run Ice Water. I was thinking Dynamic Punch. I was going double nuke with Poly, because, as you say, that not only the surprise factor of it, but the fact that the only thing you're not really bothered about hitting is the ghosts with Dynamic Punch. Everything else, it's not. Gligar, for example, it's bulky, but then you got Scald. But even if you do accidentally, someone catches a Dynamic Punch on it, it's still going to work. Like, a Poliwrath doing a Dynamic Punch is a hard hitting move. I just think that Dan said that Trev, if you do go with double nuke with Poliwrath, you then just when you see that matchup, okay, I've lost this one. Too bad. Or you say, you fish for a Scald, and then that's it. But I do the moves at versatility and the mind games you can get into. But my idea would be to go double nuke, because Ice Punch is only really doing the same thing that Scald is doing most of the time.
Yeah.
And
Well, it depends. It depends. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. But whether it depends if Jumpluff, Tropius, and Venusaur take off. I think is the big thing. And Trev.
Yeah. I think Jumpluff and Venusaur maybe, but I disagree with Dan here, unfortunately. I don't think Trev's going to be all that. I could very easily be proven wrong. Very easily be proven wrong.
Right, Jake. Well, we'll move on to yours then.
Okay, so we picked a fire type, we picked a ground type, we picked an electric type, and now I'm here to complete that with a grass type. And mine is Pokedex number 754, the Bloom Sickle Pokemon, which is Lurantis. Anyone who has done Sylph of last season, I believe it was the Forged Cup, where Lurantis was an absolute monster. Very quickly turning into one of my favourite Sylph-mons, I would say. Obviously, knowing me, you know that I'm a somewhat of a glass cannon fan. Malamar, Haunter, Fracture, Lurantis.
Are you really putting Malamar in the bracket of Haunter and Fracture?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
You forgot
Malamar.
Samurott.
Oh shit, yeah, Samurott. Oh yeah, there's a 5 for you. But half of those aren't eligible, unfortunately. Who bans dragon types? So yeah, at Lurantis, you want in grass type, and you are wanting Spout. I said it previously that I think fighters are going to be huge in this cup, and so I've gone for something with fighting coverage. Superpower is, I think Dan was saying it earlier about how certain Pokemon you need finesse to play. You need to learn the skill on how to play them. And anything that learns Superpower, I think, is one of those ones. Any debuff, any of those kinds of things. They're all trickier than your average mon. But with Fury Cutter, you're getting there in seconds. I don't think there's moves that charge much faster than Fury Cutter. And you've got Superpower and you've got Leaf Blade. Two of the cheapest, quickest, hardest hitting charge moves in the game. If I'm not mistaken, Leaf Blade is probably top 3 most broken moves.
I would say, if you take its typing out of the equation, I would say it's the best move in the game.
Yeah. I think Psy Strike, maybe, but Leaf Blade was way up there for 35 energy for 60 damage.
70 damage.
70 damage. Someone was questioning me the other day with Shiftry about whether you should throw Leaf Blade or Foul Blade if they're both neutral. And I was like, Leaf Blade and Foul Blade have the same damage, but one's cheaper. So always throw Leaf Blade because it's just such a good move. Yeah. And we were talking earlier about how you've got these things in this cup which are going to be fairly universal. And we've got Rune Regus, we've got Quillfish, we've got Poliwrath, Gligar, so on and so forth. So you lose to Quillfish, fair enough. You are poison jabs, you're just going to get poison jabbed down pretty much. Rune Regus is a very close loss. Gligar, again, you're hitting neutral with those Leaf Blades, and they're hitting super effective with the way effect and all that. But it's PB Poke 484, and neither of those are bait moves. I would say you can go in straight Night Slash, you can fight. Poliwrath with Ice Punch, you beat it. And with us all saying that Poliwrath is going to be everywhere, why not run something that beats Poliwrath? You don't want to be using Poliwrath as your Poliwrath answer. So bring something else that you can use in that scene. I think we were saying that Poliwrath is the best Quillfish answer. I think that Lurantis is one of the best Poliwrath answers. And then you've got a nice little triangle of things that you can bring, and then you can just add onto those 3 however you see fit.
That's fair. just going back to the superpower leaf blade coverage. Do you have any concerns? Because there's, grass is one of the types where there are things that have the occasional interesting coverage move. So like Tangrowth, for example, Rock Slide, really cool coverage move.
Smackdown Chestnut, looking at you, Dan.
Yeah. Meganium has Earthquake. Is there? Do you have a concern about having a coverage move that is also resisted by flying?
No, because as I said, you're going to get walled by flying types, but there's going to be something that walls just about everything else. Whatever Pokemon you pick, you're going to get walled by something.
Yeah.
And I think if you do that little triangle that I just mentioned, those grass flying types aren't going to appreciate Quillfish. They're not going to appreciate getting poison charged by that, and then poison stung. Like even I hold an argument for poison sting in this matter because charge move span could be big. Say you go up to an ice beam or something, people think it's just going to be a shot at a ball, and then ice beam's going to take something out of them. I think if you're looking at Lurantis on its own, it's not going to fare so well because it's very niche. But what it does well. You've got to look at it in tandem with other things. So Quillfish, for example, I think the two of those pair brilliantly together because Quillfish, as you said, the hardest answer to that is probably Poliwrath. You beat your Poliwrath with Lurantis.
I like
Hardest.
Lurantis. I really do. I really, really do. And I get your idea of the triangle. And I get your idea that I think you're a good player, Jake. I think you play with interesting mons. I have a Samurott because of you and watching you. You know what I mean? I have one in both leagues, Ultra and Great, now because of watching you. Purely. No one else, nothing else. It was watching you. I didn't even have a place to use it, and I built it from watching you. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have a meta to use it in. It was Gym Breakers. I watched you doing it in Gym Breakers, and I was just like, that's amazing.
Was this
yeah?
Was this the Dragonair matchup?
And it just
does anybody know the count for Dragon Pulse? No, I reckon it's about now.
So yeah, and so I appreciate the fact that you think outside the box. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes you've got a good way of playing the game, and I really know that you're instinctive. Would this triangle not be better with Venusaur?
Again,
Would it be easier with Venusaur? Maybe not for you, but for
potentially. But then you're missing out on the fighting coverage. If you, as you were saying, fighting in this meta is about as neutral as you're ever going to get. You've got what we got.
There's a lot of stuff that fighting's not going to hit, but a sludge bomb would. You know what I mean? Even your flyers are not going to appreciate a sludge bomb. And that's my point in this. And I'm not trying to poo-poo your pick or anything like that, because I do really like Lurantis. I think it's fantastic. For me, Yan comes to mind when I think Lurantis, but that's just, I see it as a very his style of play. But maybe that's just because playing against him and he's used it against me very successfully. But so I think Venusaur is a very easy answer for.
I would agree. I think Venusaur it's an easy pick. And I think we will see quite a few Venusaurs. But I think that the neutrality of...
Good word.
Thank you. The neutrality of fighting damage is going to be very useful here. There's a couple of things that you're not going to want to hit with Lurantis, obviously. You're not going to want to hit Gorgeist. You're not going to want to hit Trev, Tropius, Jumpler. Those kinds of things. All of those have in common that they are grass types. And again, I come back to that little triangle I had, or I guess it is mainly just a pairing with Lurantis and Quillfish. Acrobatics and Aerial Ace are the only two moves you're not going to want to take with Quillfish. And even then, you build up. We go back to this. You get a couple of poison things or whatever, and you throw a surprise ice beam at somebody. All is well. Game's over. And factions is one of those kind of scenarios where it only needs to work once. You only need to surprise your opponent once to have them either second guessing themselves, or you turn that 1-all into a 2-1 in your favor. Or you do it first game and you turn that, iffy little matchup. You get in their head with an ice beam and they're like, oh, what do I do now? You can throw them off their game in the same aspect as, what's the word I'm looking for? Unpredictability. And I think, again, Lurantis is one of those unpredictable picks. Yeah, it's got very predictable moves. It's an unpredictable pick. Who in the right mind is going to bring a Lurantis when you can bring a Venusaur and you can do that? But I think that fighting damage is going to be big. I think neutral fighting is a good idea, especially in the case where you've got Lurantis against Quillfish. Like, Quillfish is a good answer to Lurantis, but glassy as fuck. It's not going to want to take a couple of superpowers.
Sorry, go on.
No, that was basically done.
Like, just on this point of neutral fighting damage, like, it strikes me that Surfetched and Breloop also have this sort of thing that you're discussing here.
Why are you bringing up Breloop?
Yeah, why are you bringing Breloop?
Honestly, Matt. I mean, you had me at Surfetched, okay?
Yeah,
But really,
Listen,
mate.
I'm not saying
Really, come on. Just because you've got one because you bored in season 1 and thought, oh, I'll build this. This is clever.
I'm not.
And you've still got it, and you've never used it. So
I'm not saying it's good.
I'll convince someone to use it.
I'm not saying it's good, but if you're using a grass type to do fighting damage, neutral fighting damage. Yeah. Why not be stab? Why not be stab? Chestnut, that's a better example.
I love Chestnut. I love all Chespin evolutions. But in this meta, its fast move is too slow. You're not going to use Vine Whip.
No, you're using. Well,
surely you'd be using Smackdown because of the coverage that you're gaining.
Well, it depends. You all of a sudden, if you're using Smackdown, you're a grass type which loses to Runerigus.
I kind of want to bring up a point here where, if you don't mind me interjecting, because are you finished with your point, Matthew? Because I don't know of you.
Yeah, okay. I was just putting it out there, like, so.
Just fluid conversation.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I don't actually agree with you on saying that fighting is the most. I know, obviously, you didn't mean in a literal sense, but I don't see it as the neutral type. And I only say that because when you look at some of the top ones from, well, this isn't the official PvPoke simulator, but when you type in what's currently legal and just set it to defaults, 8 of the top 10 resist fighting. But when you look at what's actually the meta's been specifically made around, look at what dragon damage does. Because we ban dragons and there's not many sources of actual dragon damage, but look at what Dragon Breath Charizard does. Steel types banned, fairy types, there's only really Dedenne because Shinotic's bad.
I'm not forgiving you guys for banning steals, so let's
Oh, he was on my case for this in my dear ranting at me very heavily. But there's also flying, which is a more accessible type because rock is banned and steel is banned, and it's only the electrics that are going to resist that, and electrics are notoriously squishy. So really, I think flying is where you go for the neutral damage, if I'm honest, because.
So I'm not saying it's the absolute best But
Yeah,
I think
which is-
fighting down. If we look outside the top 10, you get some interesting picks. You get to what do we get? You get so the Machamp, Primate, Muck. Sorry, Amok. Again, Poliwrath. Even there's some things in here that are just looking stupid. There's Houndoom, Magmortar, and Rapidash, Electivire, Litleo. We were talking about Litleo earlier, and Litleo's not going to want to take a super battle, is it?
Look at Drake reeling off all these fire types if it's not called the Ember field. That's,
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask why it's called Ember when like none of the top picks use Ember as a move. Why not just
Well,
call it?
I'll let you in on a secret.
Fire?
We don't decide the name. So,
Oh.
yeah, but, I suppose
Send a strongly worded email.
Sorry, I know you're both entrenched in the arena, and I love the arena, and I really do. But the fact that you don't decide the name, I find repugnant. I think it's really bad. If someone named one of my children, do you know what I mean? I'd be pissed.
Yeah, I think I would as well, Ben. I think I would as well.
I'd be calling them boy rather than the name that somebody else gave them. So
Well,
maybe you guys should just refer to this as meta.
well,
So meta rather than using, because Ember. Sorry, I don't know. I've ranted about this before. I just don't think it's a fitting name.
Well, I was going to say I think we came up with a few names, but a lot of them were either inappropriate because they were being saved for something more fitting.
I thought you were
they
going to
were
say
under, like,
because
a
they were asexual.
Oh, no,
innuendo
no,
or
no,
something
no, so-
like
so
that.
for
They're
example-
inappropriate because it's just a game for children, so we
So
couldn't
for
call
example-
it. We couldn't
So,
call
for
it
example,
that.
with Vanguard, we couldn't call it the Indigo meta, as
Yeah.
in the Indigo Plateau, because that's obviously associated with Pokemon copyright and stuff like that. And then there are a couple ideas you could have for this cup. There's a lot of electric and fire, so you could call it the Plasma Cup, but then that's actually got Team Plasma involved as well. We've got to be really careful with how we entrench around.
I thought Vanguard was because of the people who worked on it, but never mind. But yeah. Anyway,
Vanguard's a
away.
great name for it. Anyway,
Yeah,
but,
Vanguard's good. Yeah. So where were we here?
Somewhere around.
we were talking about fighting.
We're talking about fighting type moves.
Yeah.
Callum had just poo-pooed on his teammate, which is going to be great fun for them later.
That's fine. I'm just going to run Lurantis and
In
all sorts
Superpower,
of shit.
everything.
Yeah.
It's all right. He's only going to run Charger Book, and that's the only game he's winning. He's already
Hey,
said.
hey, speaking of, you want a Dedenne that can actually handle ghost types. Well, Charger Bug has cropped. That's all I'm saying. It's an electric type. It resists.
What with
lightning.
this? We're all going to take 2 picks. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Anyway.
No,
Anyway.
this pains me to say this, but all Charger Bug is a worse scalp actually. There's a dagger through my heart right now because I know somewhere out there Mystic Gas is smiling, and that image is disturbing to me.
He doesn't even know why at this point. He's just he's smiling now.
You're telling me. You look at this bus bug that looks like a battery in a bus. It looks like the coastliner 8340. Sorry, it looks like the coastliner.
The coastliner 8340 was this big.
Yeah.
Because Charger Bug, I don't know if you're familiar with the anime, but Charger Bug's about this big, mate. It's literally, it's not a bus. It's a bus for ants.
What is this?
I know, but
bus
you look
for
at his
ants?
little. Have you ever made it? Have you ever made it your buddy Pokemon? Its walk animation is fantastic. Anyway, we're getting very off topic here.
I was going to say that. Forgotten what it's even called now. Lurantis. It has other charge moves. Some of them, one of them, we're probably not going to do because Leaf Blade is just no.
Leaf Storm.
Yes. Leaf Storm is just, I think it's a worse version of Leaf.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Leaf Storm though is one of those where actually, it's
Yeah, but
it's
you
a
want
hit
to
and run.
You want 2 leaf blades though at that point, don't you? Surely.
Yeah. I can speak for how good Leaf Storm is because big brag here. I beat Kalethnik last season by leaf storming his Mandibus with a Rosarid. And I was at the end of it, I was like, I don't know how I did that. I don't know what I've done, but I did it.
It's disgustingly hard.
With Charizard. Let's have a look.
At that point, you're probably wanting to go superpower. If
I know, but
but yeah, you can do X Scissor in there as well. So you can switch superpower for X Scissor if it fits your team better. Because then you are hitting those other grass types.
Yeah.
Like on the grass flyings, you're hitting them for neutral at least.
I'm not seeing it personally. I'm not seeing it. I'm not.
I'm not saying run X Scissor. I'll be honest with you. I'm saying the opposite.
Yeah, but you're saying it's an option basically. You're saying there is that little bit of versatility to it.
Yeah, and since we were saying that you need to be prepared for any kind of moveset, this is another option where you've got any kind of moveset. You are 99 times out of 100, you are going to run Leaf Blade Superpower. But what have you done? What if just out of nowhere you run Razor Leaf X as a Leaf Blade just to really mess with people? Like, well, you yeah.
I mean, you'd be a bad person, but
Oh yeah, but that was never up for debate.
That's not so much of a problem, is it really? Yeah.
I feel running Razor Leaf on Lorantis is a waste.
Oh yeah, definitely. You want?
I think it's
a spam mon.
I think there's some mons you can run Razor Leaf on and get away with it in certain scenarios, especially something like factions where you have. I mean, I've done it in Gym Breakers and things like that, where you can get away with it because you can get rid of that move. You're not stuck with it forever for an entire month and things. So yeah, I think you can, but I don't think Lorantis is one of them mons that you can do it with. I think it's versatile. Its main strength is its speed.
Do you know what I think is a really interesting Razor Leaf for here? And I only say this because I have one built from many years ago now when I was still learning.
Breloom.
No. Much worse than Breloom. I have a one moved Razor Leaf Bayleaf, Razor Leaf Bayleaf with ancient power to hit flying types.
And that was when ancient power was good the first time.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah.
Because you could have ancient power body slam, couldn't you?
Is it a body slam now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's got body slam.
Oh.
No. Bayleaf had return, and return used to be a
body slam clone. That's where I'm coming
from. I mean, this was before Shadow, so like it's not a purified one.
It's okay.
I'm just. Let's all quickly pick up devices.
Grass knot, apparently.
Yeah, I just didn't see the point. Like, I know it's only 10,000 starters for the extra charge move on Bayleaf, but like at that point, what's the
ancient power grass knot return energy ball?
Now tackle's a good move.
Tackle's solid now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Bayleaf's got more play again.
Yeah.
Because ancient power's received its not its former glory, but it's better than it became.
Yeah.
So you can do tackle grass knot ancient power.
Speaking of baby Pokemon with tackle, run Hippopotas.
No.
We're not here to endorse Bayleaf, though.
No, we're not.
We've already endorsed some crazy things, but I don't think Bayleaf is going to be.
If you're not necessarily needing that fighting coverage, let's say you've got a double fighting team or something, it would be very scary to stack a grass type on top of that because then you're very weak to fight. But you know what could have some slight potential as a fast Leaf Blade user? Leafeon has Last Resort.
Okay. Quick attack.
Which I think Last Resort actually, like normal type coverage, when you avoid for Trev, when you're avoiding Trev, is very useful here. And I think Trev will be kept down by just how good Quillfish is. So it could be something quite nice and niche.
I agree that Trev's going to be brought down because of Quillfish, Gligar, Charizard, Victini. The ridiculous amount of fires we've got. I'm kind of shitting all
Victini?
over.
Let's not diss Victini.
Let's
Victini
not.
is another one of them mons, like I said about electric.
I wasn't dissing
It's a
Victini.
gnat
Victini-
using it. You only a fool sleeps on Victini.
I
Quick attack,
completely agree.
quick
I
attack
just
nuclear.
meant that Trev being kept down by Victini doesn't sound
It's
realistic.
what? Is it 5?
Because of the
Quick
ghost type
attacks.
coverage. I think Victini will be fantastic this cup, but I just think because of the ghost access from Trev and the quick attack damage from Victini, because you're gonna run that over the confusion realistically.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is the beauty of factions. Like, if your opponent's got Poliwrath, then why not run confusion? And all of a sudden, like, let's say you've used Charizard for the first 12 weeks, and your opponent's thinking, you're right, yeah, that's fine. I'll beat his fire type. I'll beat his fire flying type with my his fire type with my water type, with my fighting type, because Poliwrath beats Charizard with Scald or whatever. All of a sudden, you can confusion through a Poliwrath. You struggle to win attack through it, but you can confusion through it, and then
Just quick
Let's
attack
take him
V-Create it. I know it's a water type, but come on, V-Create is 2.85 DPE. That's insanity.
Victini also learns Psychic, by the way, as well. So that's kind of
Yeah,
yeah.
but I mean, still, you
Yeah.
can just V-Create anything, really.
I think we should leave it here because we are literally chatting shit at this point.
I mean, that's what we're here for, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think this is the worst it's ever got. I think this is just been it's been so
I
long.
don't know. I wanted to chat and shit the movie where I literally don't know what I went ranting about, and that was
I mean,
hours.
we
That
have been.
was that the Orangaroo episode?
Yeah.
This has been going for 2 hours now, so I think fair enough.
Well,
And Matt doesn't edit anymore, so we can't
No, he
cut
doesn't.
out half
And
this stuff.
we've missed out the other shit as well that happened for the 15 minutes before Uranus. Yeah, fair.
Before we cut
Run
off, though,
Bovril in your.
before we cut off, I just wanted, there are some mons that we've touched on briefly that I think should get a lot of love here. As we said, Honchkrow could be good. Do you know what I mean? It might actually have its place. Tropius could have some sort of play here. Primeape again has got a nice little bit of move coverage. Moltres. There are other mons available than just the ones we've talked about here.
Nidoking, I think
Nidoking,
is a huge shot.
Typhlosion,
We didn't cover Piloswine, but that looks really good here
Great
as well.
shout, yeah, that was fine. Yeah.
and let's not forget XL Sandshrew, because that could just be really fun. That could
Just
add-
one more thing to add on to there. Alolan Raichu is a Piloswine counter.
Well,
Yep.
True. We tested this.
We tested this.
okay.
On that note,
On that bombshell,
On
if
that
you've
bombshell.
if you want to know how, message me and I'll tell you how.
on that bombshell, we're going to call it that. But that's we can't come back from that. That's chatting shit cancelled. But
Glad I could be of service.
That's what you should call this episode.
Chatting shit cancelled. Yeah. Okay. Thank you
Right, you've
guys
got to call it.
for joining.
She was a Piloswine counter. Right, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Matt.
See you soon,
Cheers.
guys.
See you all later.